What's up, guys? A nice 2-0 day yesterday. New Orleans in basketball was the right side, even though they almost blew it. They were winning like the whole game. And then near the end, they had like a 9-point lead with like 4 minutes left, and they almost completely blew it. They had 2 turnovers in a row. One of them was like a really questionable call, I think, on an out of bounds play, and they gave up a 3, and then all of a sudden it was a 2-point game like 40 seconds later. They were still able to hang on and do it. So hopefully you didn't wait, because that line was up to like 3.5, like fairly quickly after I put out the video. So hopefully people were not on the 3.5 there. Although if you were, I think you got really screwed on that. I think New Orleans should have won that game by several points, really. They came through for me on the -2, and then Michigan were able to pull away. They were able to wear Washington down. That was exactly the style of game that I expected in the college football championship. Michigan able to get it done, able to really hold Washington in check, especially in the later portions of the game, and really get the rushing attack going. The rushing attack was great right at the beginning of the game, and then it took off again near the end and was able to lead Michigan to that win. So we go to today. I got 4 plays here. There is a big college basketball slate, and I would be careful on some of these games here that kind of look trappish. So you got Houston is sitting at -3 as the number 2 ranked team against an unranked Iowa State team, and Iowa State is a very good defensive team. So this line looks like a trap. So I would say there are a couple of lines today that look like they're kind of begging you to take the higher ranked team. Like, it looks way too easy to take Houston, and maybe it is. So there's no way I would want to take Houston here, but there are things that keep me off of it, as far as like these are games where like the only reason to be betting them is to be fading like the trap scenario here. Although sometimes the books, I think, don't quite get it right. And yeah, it looks too easy to take Houston here. So I do think it could be a trap, but the situation doesn't really have anything that calls for it, other than the fact that this is only Houston's second road game of the season, and their other one, they didn't do that well at Xavier. But Houston, I still think they're a little bit underrated, man. People don't realize how good this Houston team is, and they're running into a really good Iowa State defense. That is true. I would not be shocked if Iowa State was able to win this game. Iowa State is very underrated as well. So we'll see what happens there. But Houston also is a really good defensive team. So I think this could be a close, kind of lower scoring battle. And KenPom has this game at 5, so I just have to stay off of it. I think it does look like a trap, but I can't buck KenPom being a couple points different there. With, I think, both teams in Houston, Iowa State are both undervalued because they both are really good defensive teams. And then Purdue is up from, I think, 6 or 6.5 to 7.5, going through the 7.5 now. So I think the numbers guys are actually getting involved in that one. They're at Nebraska. There isn't really anything that calls to me about that spot either, other than the fact that, well, Purdue is coming off a fairly big win over a highly ranked Illinois team, but Illinois now has issues where one of their best players is gone because of sexual assault charges, and Illinois might be in a little bit of turmoil there. So I don't know. It is still a big win for Purdue, so maybe they're in a letdown. Nebraska is coming off kind of a bad-looking loss to Wisconsin, although Wisconsin is quite good. I liked Wisconsin in that game. They are the better team than Nebraska. So situationally, I think this does call for Nebraska a little bit with the situation, but I'm going to stay off this one as well because KenPom has this number at 9. So I think it's just a little bit too much. It's a little bit tricky, so I'm staying away. I would lean to Florida State against Wake Forest. Wake Forest is up from 2 to 3.5, though, and I'm guessing that KenPom has Wake Forest way better than Florida State, though. He does. He has Wake Forest right at 3, so I don't know. I thought it would be higher than that. Wake Forest, I played them on Saturday. Luckily, I was in on the 3.5 there, and they covered by a half point. Wake Forest, they're coming off a pretty big win over Miami, and they do have some big game next. What is it? Virginia. Well, Virginia's just okay this year, but it could be a sandwich spot for them going to Florida State. So I do lean to Florida State in that one, but it's not one that I can quite get there with. It's not one of my favorite plays. I I think Eastern Michigan is in a letdown spot because they're coming off a pretty big win over a Kent State team that, even though they're in the middle of the pack in the MAC right now, Kent State is one of the better teams in the MAC. They are good. I think they've probably played a more difficult schedule than a lot of these teams. Eastern Michigan just upset them, so they could be in a letdown spot. So I would look out for that. They were double-digit underdogs in that one. So Eastern Michigan's up from 4 to 5. I'm assuming Ken Pom does not have Eastern Michigan. Yeah, he does not have Eastern Michigan as a very good team at all. He has this line right at 5. Central Michigan, not a very good team there, but Central Michigan's coming off an upset of their own against Ball State, so I got to stay off of that one as well. And Duke is another line that kind of looks like a trap at Pitt, but Duke, I mean, they're just sitting at 5. It does look way too easy to take Duke, but well, Ken Pom has this line at 4, so I don't know. The situation just doesn't really beckon to me because Duke isn't really in a bad spot. They just beaten Notre Dame. Nobody cares about that, and it was probably closer than maybe it should have been. And they got Georgia Tech next, so I don't care about that really. So that's not going to be a play for me either. I lean to Georgia Tech, although they're up from 5.5 to 6.5. Ken Pom, I think, has this line at 6. Notre Dame's coming off that tough battle against Duke, so I do think they're in a hangover spot there. But Georgia Tech's coming off, they're coming off kind of an ugly loss, I think, to Boston College as well. So I don't know if you consider that to be like a tough battle of a game or not, because I think that was the game where Georgia Tech had a big lead and they totally imploded and blew it. So I do lean to Georgia Tech, and the line kind of looks suspicious a little bit. Like, who's Georgia Tech? They're not good. Like, who are they to be laying 6.5 against anyone? Ken Pom has this line at 6, but Georgia Tech does have Duke up next. So yeah, I'll just stay away from that one as well, even though I think Notre Dame is in the hangover spot. And I lean to BYU. This is actually close to a play for me on BYU. BYU's coming off kind of an embarrassing loss, which I'll talk about in a minute, at home against Cincinnati. Not a very good loss for BYU there, but now they get to go out on the road, kind of forget about that, go to Baylor. Baylor, the thing that keeps me off of BYU here is that Baylor also almost lost in their last game to Oklahoma State, a game that Baylor should probably not have lost, although it was definitely close. I said the line, it was one of those like trap lines, but it was one of those ones where I thought Ken Pom was telling you that Oklahoma State was actually too overrated, actually, somehow. Ken Pom has them really not good. So that kept me away from it, and luckily so, because it was close, and Oklahoma State probably should have covered, but Baylor escaped in overtime and wound up covering the number. So Baylor is coming off an escape, so both these teams might be focused here. The thing about this game is, though, I think the number is off with Baylor at 3. The number is almost telling you that these teams are like right about even, but I actually think BYU is the slightly better team, even though they're ranked lower than Baylor. The public sentiment probably doesn't realize that or think that. They know Baylor. They know the name team. They don't think BYU is that good. BYU is a newcomer to the Big 12, so this is going to be unfamiliar for them. So a couple of things keep me off of it, but the reason BYU lost to Cincinnati really uglies the game up, slows the pace way down. They slowed BYU down more than they have been this year by far. They held BYU to like one of their lowest, I think their lowest point total by a huge amount at home this year. Cincinnati does that. They slow the game down. They ugly up the game. That's what they did to BYU. Baylor doesn't do that. Baylor plays a faster paced game, and that's the style of game that BYU wants to get in. So I expect a bounce back from BYU there. Baylor plays the same style as them. It's just that BYU, I think, is a bit better at shooting than Baylor actually is. So I would lean to BYU there. All that being said, the actual plays I'm on, hopefully this doesn't take too long. I'm running down all these games here. Well, that's going to be one of the games that I'm going to be on. I'll mention that in a minute. Both of these games have had line movement, giving me at least a better number. Line movement that's gone against the team that I'm on, but it gives me a better number at least. Seton Hall at Georgetown is the first one. I'm going to take Georgetown. +7 is where it's at right now. Probably that'll be the number. Seton Hall, they're in a letdown spot, dude. They just won at Providence, which was a nice bounce back after they lost at Xavier in ugly fashion. I don't know if I was on Xavier. I think I might have been on Xavier in that one because that was a sandwich. Seton Hall had just beaten UConn. Then they went into Xavier. Tough spot, sandwich spot. They lost the game. Had a second straight road game and won at Providence. And I think Providence lost I forget his name, Tompkins or something like that, to an injury. He's one of their better players, and he's now out. So that's a tough blow for Providence. They lost him maybe in the previous game there. So Seton Hall won that one. And now what do they do in their last game? They came home and they beat Marquette, who was ranked 7 at the time. Huge win, upset type of win. I don't know if the court was stormed in that one, but that was a big, big win for Seton Hall, man. Huge win for Seton Hall. And now they have to go on the road again and play Georgetown. And they have Butler up next, who's been playing a bit better in the conference, at least than Georgetown. Well, Butler, they're both 1-3 in conference, but Butler does have the better record. But this is just a letdown spot for Seton Hall, man. And this is like the lowest game they have in the schedule. And then they have Butler, St. John's, Creighton, Providence, Marquette. So this is like the down spot for them in Georgetown. I know I got caught playing them a couple games ago against Creighton. I thought it was a good spot to do it. Georgetown didn't fall that far from the number there. Georgetown was able to get a win in their last game against DePaul. Who cares? DePaul is terrible. By far the worst team in the Big East. But that's going to break Georgetown's losing momentum. I think I like that. I think that's like a momentum starter for them after losing 3 games in a row. They get a win. They beat DePaul. They get a Big East win, get the monkey off their back. They have their first win in the Big East. Even though they have UConn up next, I don't think Georgetown's really overlooking anybody. Seton Hall's been playing well. I think Georgetown's going to want to do well in this game. And looking at what KenPom has, Seton Hall's been reeling off these big wins, but KenPom only has them ranked 67, so not that good. And he has them at a 6-point victor here. So I'm on Georgetown. It'll be +7 or something like that. And the other game I'm going to be on is going to be taking the points with Texas, +5.5. I think everyone is just shitting on Texas now, man. Like, oh, Texas is somehow in the rankings at 25, but they suck. Like, they're not even listed as being in the tournament. I don't think they're that far out of the tournament. I think they're like a bubble tournament team at this point. KenPom has them ranked like in the 30s, something like that. So I don't think they're that bad. And they are in a bounce back spot, man. They just lost at home in their first Big 12 game to Texas Tech. That's ugly. They lost by 11 at home. I don't think they're going to let that stand, man. That was their first Big 12 game. They lost to a team that's not as good as they are. I don't think, even though Texas Tech has a good record, I think Texas is the better team of the two. Texas does have to go out on the road here, and they've only played 1 road game this year and lost badly to Marquette, but I think it's a bounce-back spot. I think that was an ugly loss at home, and now you get out of there. You get to go on the road. Even though it's a little bit of an unfamiliar environment, you're playing Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a newcomer in the Big 12, and I think as Texas, I think you want to welcome them, man. And even though you have West Virginia up next, they're at the very bottom. Cincinnati's been playing well, so I think Texas is going to be focused on Cincinnati. West Virginia's at the bottom of the conference, so I don't think Texas is going to overlook anybody at this point. They're not going to overlook Cincinnati here, but what did Cincinnati just do? Like I just said, they just went into BYU and held them completely down. It was the best defensive performance by far that anybody's had against BYU this year. Cincinnati's a good defensive team, but Texas is more of a style of team that can handle a team like, actually, KenPom does have Texas Tech a little bit better than Texas. Whatever. Texas, they play a bit better defense. Well, actually, BYU plays better defense. Excuse me. Never mind. But Texas, they're like a fairly balanced team. They play decent offense and decent defense here. I think they don't like to play as frenetically as BYU does. So I think it's a letdown spot, though, for Cincinnati. They're now coming back home, basking in that, returning home as the victors. They went into BYU, had a huge win, nice upset win, and they have Baylor up next, which I don't know if you're going to overlook Texas, and this is their conference home opener, but even so, I don't know if they might have one eye looking forward to Baylor there too, because Baylor's got the better ranking right now than Texas. Cincinnati's up from 3 to 5.5 in this game, but I think it's a big letdown spot, and I think it's a bounce back spot for Texas. Cincinnati, KenPom does have them as the better team, but has them just winning it by 5. I'll take Texas +5.5 to bounce back from an ugly loss against Texas Tech. Cincinnati, I think, looked too good at beating BYU. That was a huge win for Cincinnati. Big upset win, is a pretty big underdog. So that's college basketball. NBA, I don't have any plays. The closest I would be to making a play would be on the Orlando Magic. Minnesota T-Wolves up from 4 to 5. They have 58% of tickets on them, but 76% of the cash is on the Magic. I think Minnesota's not in the best spot. They just played a close game at Dallas and wound up losing, and they have the Celtics up tomorrow. So that is a look ahead, but if you're coming off a loss, are you actually going to overlook Orlando? I don't know, maybe when you have the Celtics up ahead. So I do think it's a look ahead. It's not the best spot for Minnesota, although Orlando, they're still a team that's been playing pretty well, so I don't know if they're going to entirely overlook them. And Orlando did not suffer the letdown. They were in a horrible spot coming home, beating the Nuggets, coming home from beating the Nuggets, and then they didn't suffer the letdown. They were able to beat the Hawks in overtime, but that game went into overtime, so they did put in a lot of effort to avoid the letdown and win that game. So I don't know if Orlando's going to run out of some gas in this one too, but I think that was a sandwich spot, so I do kind of expect them to be focused on the T-Wolves here. So I lean to Orlando on that one, but I can't quite get there because I think both teams are not in the best of spots. Going to hockey real quick before I got to get out of here. Hockey, I got two plays. Let's do this. I do lean to the Islanders a little bit because Vancouver – they're in a back-to-back, and they just won at the New York Rangers. So that's a big win for Vancouver. So I think they're in a bad spot, but the Islanders are returning home from a road trip, and they finished it at Vegas, even though they lost fairly badly at Vegas. I don't want to take the Islanders coming off a road trip that took them out west, so I just got to stay away. But Vancouver's in a bad spot, back-to-back. Islanders are down from minus 130 to minus 124. They got 75% of the cash and 60% of the tickets, so I do lean to the Islanders because Vancouver's in the even worse spot after winning at the Rangers last night and being in a back-to-back, but I can't quite get there with that one. I can't do it. What am I actually on? I'm going to be on the last two games on the slate here. I'm on Ottawa. Calgary's down from minus 140 to minus 129. I'm on Ottawa at, I don't know, some underdog price. What am I on here? I got to look here. Plus 115. We'll see what happens here. Ottawa's got 75% of the cash and 50% of the tickets evenly split. I don't like the spot that Calgary is in here. They're returning from a road trip, even though they lost in the game that I faded them in their last game against Chicago, who was in the injured player theory with Bedard out for his first game. Still, that was a pretty hard-fought game by Calgary, a close game right to the end after another hard-fought game against Philadelphia. They're coming back from a road trip that was kind of in their area and in the Midwest a little bit in the U.S., so not that far, but it did take them all the way out to Philadelphia. 4-game road trip. Now they're returning home. They're playing a lowly Ottawa team, one of the lowest points in their schedule. And they do have Arizona and Vegas up next, back out on the road. So I think that exacerbates the return home distractions. When you only have one game at home, you don't have that much time at home. You have to get your home stuff out of the way before you go back on the road. I think they might overlook Ottawa here. Even though they are off of 2 straight losses, those are kind of tough games, even though losing to Chicago as a favorite doesn't look very good. You might think they're in a bounce back spot, but I think the return home negates that, and they have Western Conference foes up next, so I don't like it. I really don't like the spot for Calgary. And it's a 3rd game in 4 days. It is a 4th game in 6, and it is a 5th game in 8 days, all in different cities. That's brutal scheduling for them. Ottawa, on the other hand, they are coming off 3 straight losses, kind of ugly losses, all on the road. Vancouver, Seattle, Edmonton. Vancouver and Edmonton have both been playing quite well. Seattle, maybe not so much, but and that was a bad spot for Seattle, actually, off of the Winter Classic, and Ottawa still didn't play well. So I think Ottawa's going to want to salvage something from this road trip here, and they have 2 days off to try to break this momentum. So they're in the better rest spot here. I think they're going to want to come up with something, focus on something. They got a winnable game here. They can take one of these games on the road trip. They can probably take the Buffalo game that's up next too, but I think they're going to be focused here, coming off this stretch of losses, having lost all these games on the road trip. I like it. It's a bad spot for Calgary on the return home. I'm on Ottawa. And then the other game I'm on is going to be on the Arizona Coyotes, plus 136. You can get a nice money line price on them. The Bruins are dropping, though. They're down from 158 to 152. Minus 152 is a road money line favorite. 99% of the cash, it looks like, on the Bruins. I don't think that's true. 91% of the tickets. So the Bruins are going to be the public team. People are going to expect them to bounce back, but I look at it the complete opposite way. The Bruins just played last night. They're playing a 3rd game in 4 days, all in different cities. It is also a 4th game in 6 days and a fifth game in 8 days, and almost all of them in different cities, and a tough stretch of games and losing at home to Pittsburgh by 1. And they had a furious comeback in that one. Then they beat Tampa 7-3, huge win. Went out on the road last night and coming off a huge win, they ran into a Colorado team in elevation. Colorado was off an ugly 8-4 loss to Florida. Colorado was able to do it, and the Bruins took them all the way to the wire. Really big game, tough game for both teams. Huge game, and wound up going to a shootout, and the Bruins lost. Now they have no time off. They have to go out of elevation into Arizona, and they have Vegas up next in 2 days. I think they might be looking ahead to Vegas a little bit here. Arizona, this is a sandwich spot. Arizona's the lesser of these 3 teams in this stretch. Really hard-fought game the Bruins are coming off of with no time off. Really tough spot. Arizona's had 1 day off, and they have not traveled. They're just sitting at home. They're going to want to salvage something from this homestand here where they've lost to Florida, who is pretty good, the Islanders, who've been playing decently, and losing to Winnipeg badly in their last game, even though Winnipeg's good. 6-2 loss to Winnipeg. I think they're going to want to come up with something. They're going to be focused. You got the Bruins coming in, a good team. You're on a 3-game loss streak. I think you're going to be focused for this, and the Bruins might not be totally focused on Arizona because of the games that surround this. It's a sandwich spot. I like it. I'm on Arizona. So those 4 plays I'm on today: Georgetown in college basketball +7, Texas in college basketball +5.5, in NHL, Ottawa +115, and Arizona +136. Moneyline underdogs. Hopefully we do it, man. Let's keep this winning streak alive. We're on 4 straight winning days. I want to keep it going. Hopefully it happens. Have a good day, man. Peace out.